Recently, the US has been constantly spreading disinformation against China. This is malicious. China's position on Ukraine is consistent and clear. We've always been playing a constructive role in promoting peace talks. The top priority now is that all parties should exercise restraint to de-escalate and cool down the situation.
Let's speak to Srikanth Kondapalli, who's in New Delhi. He is the Dean at the School of International Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Srikanth, thank you so much indeed for your time. I wonder if you agree with the analysis that one phone call from Xi Jinping to Vladimir Putin could end this conflict.
Well, there is some context for this because the February 4th joint statement between Putin and Xi Jinping, just before the Olympics, Winter Olympics began, there was the bonhomie between the two. And it appears that they have discussed the issue related to Ukraine. Secondly, coincidentally, on February 24th, when the Olympics sports event was completed, the war began. Invasion of Russia on Ukraine began. So there is a lot of coincidence on that front. So it is possible that a discussion between the two could probably end. On the other hand, of course, there is a structural issue in the war itself, as Russia had put up conditions on the NATO on Ukraine's neutrality and non-deployment of weapon systems in Ukraine by the NATO.
Srikanth, I mean, obviously everybody understands China's desire to increase its influence, especially around Asia, and the way it's been countering American supremacy in that part of the world. And we know that Joe Biden, in the reset at the start of his presidency, he wanted to concentrate on that part of the world as well, but he's now been distracted and has to focus on what's happening in Ukraine. But in terms of the bigger picture, is this not the perfect opportunity for Beijing to show the world that it respects the order of law, that it respects the humanitarian issues that are happening and being abused in Ukraine, that it deserves its place on the Security Council of the United Nations?
You're right that ideally the Chinese should have been proposing all those, but they are heavily dependent on Russia. For energy now, 14% of their energy last year came from Russia. Secondly, there is also a lot of coordination between the two in the multilateral institutions, and hence the Chinese silence on the Ukrainian humanitarian disaster to an extent. Ukraine trade with China is very less, and China's dependence on Ukraine in investments, etc., is also pretty less. So I guess that is the factor. However, the Chinese would, since they mention about sovereignty and territorial integrity and other issues in the Security Council and so on, there is also a problem for China if they go too far in terms of supporting Russian influence, Russian role in Ukraine. So this is a dilemma that the Beijing was caught with.
A former senior member of an American administration, and the source has to remain nameless, unfortunately, has said that actually he thinks that the Security Council won't exist probably this time next year, specifically because of what's happening. And I'll repeat something I said to a guest, Srikanth, you're going to like this, okay? But I repeated this 24 hours ago, but it's worth repeating again. The man who was the chief prosecutor in the international case against the former Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic, he said to us a few days ago, he said, how can the Security Council even function when it's got two dictatorships with permanent seats?
Absolutely. The way the discussion has gone in the Security Council, especially in terms of the disaster, humanitarian disaster in Ukraine, the number of people killed, over 10 million refugees landing in other parts of, say, Poland, Romania, Hungary, and so on. This is disaster, and the Security Council should have taken into consideration the humanitarian aspect of this crisis.
Srikanth Kondapalli, always appreciated. Thank you so much indeed.